나게 진소 예베 소놈기 롤라 펜지레 상예 로 바르쇼 상게 제상조게 조놈라 전주 버도다니 겹순제 나게 진소 예베 소놈기 롤라 펜지레 상예 로 바르쇼 Samjan Thamje Dewa Tang Devi Gyudang Dembara Gyud Samjan Thamje Zungan Dang Zungan Ye Gyudang Dawara Gyud Samjan Thamje Nyirin Chadang Nidang Dang Nyamebara Gyurji Samjan Thamje Dewa Tang Devi Gyudang Dembara Gyud Samjan Thamje Zungan Dang Zungan Ye Gyudang Dawara Samjan Thamje Nyirin Chadang Panyamla Nebara Gyurji Sajibyo Eji Chuji Mendotam Ri Ravali Nyele Gembandi Sangye Jendo Midembo Aye Dogenanda Jela Chebarjo Idang Guru Rana Mendala Kaniya Dayami.
From now until my enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and by the merit created in this practice, may I attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. From now until my enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and by the merit created in this practice, may I attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. From now until my enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and by the merit created in this practice, may I attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. Here is the great earth filled with the smell of incense, covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, the 4 continents, wearing a jewel of the sun and moon. In my mind I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandukaram Niratamaya.
Kange dujenge zonwa dawa tamje bambe chere tambe chene tonze be kodam te lo cha cha lo. Wadan jamgola matonga pa chembe sung turbi nangla. Semba zangna sadang lam yang zang, semba ngana sadang lam yang ngang, kanche semba tala rale so ze sungre. Wada tendi nikla nangpe che te yang zo lui dingi namgir mare. Chi 자제 둘로 건상 어다 남길 때 땐자원 게 돼요 말해 치 자와다 쩌빠 리기 남길 칼라자상 둘로 건상 근데 두요 말해 난기 삼년도 상라 두그레스 삼로 셈바 상보 지바이나 이니 최수 줘야 된다. 셈바 넘바지나 최수 누구 말해서 송거래스.
아니 제림보체 아니 송와레.
송두부 제림보체 송레스. 셈바 장나 사당하면서.
And so the great master Tsongkhapa has said that with a kind heart, with a good heart, a good intention, then the basis is also good. That actually having this positive basis relies on having a good intention, having a good heart. And the basis of the Dharma, the foundation of the Dharma, doesn't rely on the physical aspects, our activities and behaviors and so on, such as, eating and drinking and, the outward, physical things, but rather, as Master Tsongkhapa has said, that it relies on this intention, this kind-hearted, good intention.
물주 토메 잠벤 제페 라렌 스드마 제데 차디오레 대양 땅오네 셈 주길 땅야게 탑람 쪼 장주기 셈싱인데 답베 냠len 간스지기에메 이 딘디시 삼로 인디가라 딸 제질지 첨볼 차요레스
주진
제지 돈다데 벨지 첨볼 차요레
And so, whether or not something is the Dharma, if it is of negative intent, it is not the Dharma. With a positive, well-intentioned mind, then it is the Dharma. And one of the very foundational practices of the Buddha Dharma here is we have this the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas, or the 37 practices of all the Buddha's sons, written by Gyaltse Tome Zampo, and about this subject of bodhicitta here in this text, that this very subject of this well-intentioned altruistic mind is that which actually transforms the mind. Therefore, it is an extremely important topic, an extremely important subject.
다 디나라 돈다 마고나 알아서 디 간데이나 섬섬 개지겠다 용그레스 돈다데 마고나 디 배저기 돈다데 야오지 마고이나 디 치디 깜보지 깡깡을 섬다이나 디 간데지나 섬섬지 용용에 냐가요레스.
And so if we don't study this well, if we don't understand the meaning of this text well, then there's really a good possibility that, the risk that we may look at these words and not quite really have a full understanding of their meaning. We might misunderstand their meaning.
낭배 최 가래나 랑 진진난 대회 최지라 랑 진진난 대회 루기 자주 ngaki marje 가래인 바데 미거와티거레스 두거티거레스 라 jen 진진난 대회 최지라 아니 장보장 약보티거레스 내 낭배 최고 망지드레스.
The very foundation of the Buddha Dharma, the very basis, a basic way to look at this, the view of Buddha Dharma, is that which we do and engage in through a self-cherishing motivation. Something that we do for ourselves, for oneself, is considered to be non-virtuous. However, when we engage in activities and conducts with the intention of others in our mind, then this is considered virtue. And this is the very foundation of Buddhism.
디 임바데 가르잖아. 러번 다와타 아빠게 우만집에는 빼면서 살포야레스. 당보 ngaje zala jengirchi zaski dijingwela chagipa zujun chularang mebai rola niji kyugan telandu zera sundu la karsungwa nga zo nganjin lenke kesan kelute nga jibe tambo nga de nganjin lenke kigare nganjin lenke te wangi ngairwa kigare nge ini ngairwa kigare nge yala nge pimpinche nge tropo nge zashi duskene ranchola cha jinchola dang 대왕기 뚝숨 사본데 제밖에 아니 대왕기 미고에 레사 대왕기 코라 코르츠 지순 거 알았어.
다와드락바 아니 찬드라키르티 다마키르티 찬드라
찬드라키르티
찬드라키르티. And so the Master Chandrakirti has spoken to this very thing in a verse where he explains that first comes the arising of self-clinging. Through the arising, we self-cling due to clinging to this I. So first there is this thought of I, me. And then secondly, from that comes my mind, or my cup, my family, my friend. So then we have this partiality. Now we have this self, and we have this partiality. And due to this partiality, due to this I and mine, thoughts of me and mine, we have then aversion to others, and then clinging to our own, clinging to ourself, to our own preferences. So we have aversions and preferences, and the Master Chandrakirti has spoken of this in Omalajupa, in entering the middle way.
Oda dandadi ngaranzo jujatige ta lalin sudimme ani tonjen nibade tudiores.
And so if we look in the text that we are studying now, the second verse actually speaks to this very point.
Ta dini nyengi cholan docha chultrayo se sungudu wasi. Ta te karzana nyengi chola nga se nganjin lenki ti shuking wangi any pe nyela chapade pe reserve babchuna jinji ngaranzo ngam shushugi suji tigu go mar suji lamden jogo go mar ngam shushugi kigores
samago so
nyengi chola
dihago so
docha chutrayo seade nganjin lenki wangi nyen sedela any pe chabe chapade ranjin lenki yongo res suji gi ti lamden jogo go mares ngweman ngaranzo 리저브니 추구고 나진지 연구
리저브
리저브 리저브니 추오나 배 수부 연구로 와
And so within this second verse there is this line that says attached to your loved ones you are stirred up like water. And so what this is referring to again is this perspective of preference, of clinging to something that we are attached to, something that we want for ourselves. So attached to your loved ones, you are stirred up like water. And so what does this mean, to be stirred up? So what happens is that through this attachment, naturally we have a kind of this a movement, this strong movement, just as, for example, in the high mountains would have like a rushing mountain stream that just naturally rushes, kind of frothing and all stirred up. So attached to your loved ones, you are stirred up like water.
Oda di yundigala digi karera arang jinjingi kunilnabe semta nyebodi meazo ore segarmado semta nyebo meazo oda kugiyo mares. Chidani semta nyebo mazozedel kugiyo mares. Arang jinjing kunilnabe semta nyebo joroa chapakyaji jijoroa. Oda tezo kago gure sungores.
And so as this is the case, as this is the very cause, like this self-cherishing of what we want for ourselves, and then what we are averse to causes us to be stirred up. As this self-cherishing is the very cause of this. This is what we need. What needs to be eliminated is our self-cherishing, our self-clinging.
어다 니바데게 다이 졸라 제당 멘탈 말세 숭숭도아스 다티 란진지 왕게 딩인 다르제 다롱은 좀 되겐지 그 율문을 좀 되겐 다직 땐 싸와니니가 말해 나랑주 로또페 왕게 팀부지 견 충자지 왕게 데라니 베 견주제네니 다르제네 니 데라 당섬기거레스 대양 란진지 왕게 용거레스
라소니 로 토페
로토파.
로 토파스는
로 토파즈나 로 머run와 로 친지로 토파 친지로
오 라소
로 양다바마이바
라소. And then the second line of this second verse within the 37 practices is hating your enemies, you are stirred up like fire, or you burn like fire. And so again, now having this partiality of aversion to our enemies, to those we don't like, for example, then this stirs us up, as the text says, like fire. It makes us burn like fire. And it's actually due to this misunderstanding, a non-authentic understanding that we enter into this mindset of hating our enemies, of not liking our enemies, and again, burning like fire.
어다 랑도르제 티무 문나젠 세다 어다 티무 시디 마리바드 원진네 아니 랑자 강인 도르자 강인 디 미시브 온게 용거레스 랑자 시디 펜바퉁에 데와퉁에 아니 베 수수 신디당 치마 펜젤라 아니 펜바투야기 로지라 랑자 아니 데 베줄제네 아니 로렌 디바체와시 도르자 시두갈라 아니 신디 마체베 치마 펜젤라양 곧 컵수지 펭기에나 풀라 능인지에나 딘 도르자레스 컵술레 펜이에나 풀라 능이에나 딘 도르자레스
풀라
능이에나 딘 도르자레스 와다티 가지 미게와 몽베 왕기 준데베 미게리 강가 도레야까지 시고래 와다 딘디 랑더 미시야데 마리베 왕기 용고레스
And so the next line is, in the darkness of confusion, you forget what to adopt and discard. And so due to our ignorance, due to being under the sway of our ignorance, we forget what activities to take up and which activities to abandon. For example, in terms of what we need to adopt, these things that bring good, these things that are virtuous, these things that will promote a benefit in the future. These are things on the side of what we need to take up, of what we need to adopt. And on the other side then, there may be things that should be adopted and we don't do them. We don't take them up, we don't engage in them, so we don't know what to discard. And this actually, both of these come due to the ignorance, again come to this ignorance from this attachment and aversion.
오다 보일봉에 야절 알린세야데 오다 된다와 나랑도 레 당보아 장주세바 레 당보아 있나 아니 된디기 랑졸라 차 진졸라 장 된디 율들은 되나 코 차장 왕기 장주세베 냠린 용거 말에 냠린 마운디 된다왜 된디기 깬 용인지 포 율지나 랑기 포일나 빵구레 대순거레스
So ani geshila di ni yena yangdra sacha yena yangdra pena di yungen sana
율겐 세다가라
di mi yena yangdra sacha yena yangdra
율겐 세도 율 세도가 길데 또또다 소수 계삭이 율데 고고가래
라소.
된다고 계속 율들라 가르쳐 거래 미인인즈지 체사지요
라소.
자인즈 누구 주사지요
라소.
아니 엠바 로샤데발라 텐디 기니요 말와 어다 텐디나 레땅보 전주스비 냠레는 누구여자 된다고 율들라 율넨스 파율 된다고 파율 냠바이나 왕국레스 텐디 용구메나 다 지존한 대지 냠렌전에 야가요와.
And so the last line reads, "Give up your homeland. This is the practice of bodhisattvas." So for beginning practitioners on the path who still have the risk of falling into this attachment to one's own preferences and aversion to others due to clinging to oneself, one prefers something for oneself and then discriminating with others, then have some kind of partiality or aversion, then if this is the situation, then we should abandon that kind of place. If we are within that kind of a place, then we run the risk of not being able to guard our bodhicitta, to cultivate this altruistic mind and guard our bodhicitta, and therefore it should be abandoned. It's not conducive to our practice of bodhicitta. So if you find yourself in a place that has any types of these conditions and causes and situation, then you should look to abandon that kind of a place. For example, in a certain place, if there are people that disturb you, enemies, those that you don't like or you don't like you, someone you consider an enemy, then they actually become detrimental to your practice, then you should avoid that kind of place, right? And go to an isolated place where that condition doesn't exist for you.
어다더니 디가라 오니 장주 세베 레땅부에다 냠낸 주디가라 가지 장주기 셈 깨발라 게 제기 유지나 방고래 세대 돈다데 뜻순거래 년기 졸라 너저 주더요 나이 졸라 제당 멜트람바 란더 제베 티무 문나친 벌루홍아 결슬알링인스 어데 잉글리시 송자나.
And so for beginners on the path, again, if you are in a place where it is not conducive to your generating, cultivating, and promoting your practice of bodhicitta, then this is a place that you should avoid, and as the text says, abandon. And in this verse, attached to your loved ones, you are stirred up like water. Hating your enemies, you burn like fire. In the darkness of confusion, you forget what to adopt and discard. Give up your homeland. This is the practice of bodhisattvas.
오다 오니 람림증구나 장주기 셈 냠낸 주디 간라 당보 균데 맹아든 거네 냠낸 주나 균데 맹아든 주디 갈라 तेनाला लोतांगम दे योमारेस ओता लोतांगम दे लामे मेंगा चिनि न्यामलेंगे ने तांबो लोतांगम दे टुवरसिया दे पे मिसिबो कोआ 쳔보 योरेस ओता राजन जेबे कादला 아니 란 진진기 로데 삼로데 이젠 진진라마 규르디가라 लोतांगम मटुबे 렘산테 쳔초초지 요마레스 데 라메 맹아레스 라메 에네 베 숨긴라 두스지네 담보냐면 제거레스 땅님 쓴데 시작해 점버리 니게 또또 땅님 두사시 용거레스 땡 용거레스 아니 체메지나라 니지 체메 가와 체메 잠바 체메 땅님 체메즈데 체메지데 땅님 체메데 주고요레 림바제나 주고들요레데
Shugusana?
제마
Lasso. Namgyun.
남균 티나라
Jula.
줄레요레스 이나양티 카프니 냠낸 지디가라 카프니 땅부 땅님 체메투 데니 니지 체메 가와 체메 잠바 체메투 부레스 데냐 라메맹아레스 데하고거레 다 땅님 주메나 고 니링 년기 졸라 도샤 추더요 로야지다 다이 졸레 제당 멘서는 바르로야데 매잘 까누고 라진게 까고거레 이 시부지 내 전부야레스
So when we practice through the stages of our Dharma practice, actually the practice of equanimity, of considering all equally, is of extreme importance. It becomes actually an extreme importance when we're training here in the altruistic mind, when it comes to the practice of exchanging self and others, taking what one's own happiness, giving it to others, one's own difficulties, taking it on, exchanging self and others. Without equanimity, it's not possible to enter into the practice of exchanging self and others. So actually that's why the teachings of equanimity we teach those again and again, because equanimity is so important. In this very text, in this very verse, actually, that's indicated here. So we have the four immeasurables of immeasurable happiness, joy, equanimity, and so forth. And generally, equanimity is placed on the fourth among the four immeasurable practices, the four immeasurable contemplations. But actually, this is actually a very special like pith instruction to place this first, and so. This is taught to place the equanimity first within the four immeasurables. Ani tangpo di semeji ginangla ani tangpo.
당부 니시세메 열에스. 니시세메, 가와세메, 잠바세메스. 되니 당념세메스 열에스.
예나양 디 tangpo.
예나양 당부디 당념세메데 당부 마음나 니시세메 깨야코나
And so within the four immeasurables, when we place equanimity first, then the further contemplations can be accomplished. If one does not yet have stable practice in equanimity, then one can't go on to have the immeasurable love. Immeasurable compassion, and so on. So this is a very special pith instruction, and this is what helps us to prevent the very arising of attachment to our own side and aversions to others. Equanimity is a very basic, a very important practice.
이 깨요 말세야데 오늘 유전열에스. 말아서 론 파게 셈나라 란초데 젠초지 예진 제디 연나 젠갈아 에베 둥알 겸도 로케야게 가지케타 마카브레스 젠 둥알 겸도 로데 랑다 젠지 예지 제비 로팅앙니 아니 젠 둥알 겸도 시에데 둥알레 타르네 로케야 삼로 코리아데 카브레스 딘디 팀 삼로도 마코나 니지생인데 다 칸에 라브라마다 니중에 맞이 희교 말했어. 로 땅용도 주비나 랑겐 달라미베 엔베 달라네 동알 겸되지 로지케 투비나 다 니지케 라틸 자파선지 키그레즈.
And so it's not that this doesn't come with no reason, that there actually is a reason that we need to train in this, and we need to work with our minds in this equanimity. It's because in our mind, when we look at ourselves and others and these various situations that we all experience, for us it's much more easy to see that in our own side rather than being able to see the difficulties, sufferings, and problems in others, and to really take this to heart. So this is actually something that's really hard to do, to look at it from that side, and to have a true understanding of the side of the enemies. If we are able actually we can see this in ourselves, maybe from our own situation easier, But if we can actually generate the mind that can see this and train in the difficulty in others, the suffering of others, then this is really extremely beneficial when we can do this with one of our very enemies.
오다 든리 인도가라 다 간디시 로탄염 주부고래 로탄염 삼로 간디시 땅고래 세디가라 오는디 존존의 손아진 나랑서 히부 간디지나 중얼 민더바 총바래 대완더바 총바래 대완더바 총나야 란치부 삼네 토마 매번에 단다 버도 란치부 삼는 데바래 기벤투 투야 말에 다른 코르벤 롱데야래 답비 지나더니 좀 된데 나만이 좀 된데 말에 당분이 좀 선바세게 도바 당분이 최선바부지 차요 말에 나랑 전화진지 코로나 그런지 상기인데 괜찮아요래 코로나랑 송들 좀 됐네 당분 아니 코로나 송발라스 좀 된데기 송레스 당분 아니 코로나 송발라스 아니 젠든진에네 상게레스 이 그런 란진진다 단진다 데리왕게 떠동 코로나네요레스 좀 된데기 띠송레스 어다 띠기 가르치고래 젠진진 제바이나 부야링베 아니 빼 땡기시들레 동알이 겹투야 되나 땡기시들 뚝투야기 샘기시들 터도 뚝투야지 어때 땡데 린두가라 즉 대화 뚝사데 라진징 많이 많이 라진징 간에 동알 대화 뚝이요바 가르쳐다 젠진징은 대화 뚝이요바데 통화이나 데라 트와시기 그래 티 트와시기이나 인티 토네 베조지기래 똥녀지기래 똥녀지베이나 아니 즉 오늘 샘 당염데 즉 해야지려레스 데 렘상 랑기 달라미니 로당염 tum나 카가요레스 숭도아 가르스 타칸스 투보레 랑이 녀나 마인켄 다 마인케 파르메셈 진저로아
라소
파르메셈 젤레미네 아니 당보 로디장 파르메셈 젤레미네 틴페 강알테나 텔라페 디마주나 아니티 셈나라 미서바지다 셈나라 아니페티 아니페 라둥알디 나르 토마다 셈나 미서바지 케이나 anything 칼레라 랑라 너바 춘춘 짱이 자가마서는 춘춘쟁이 디기들마 가보 딜라 가로 레비나 당원에 랑긴 딩긴 자쟁이 미지 라니 박하바니도 시네 칼레 칼렌장에지 숨도 왔어 땡원에 답해버렸어 장난도 신장 보고 말했어
And so how is it that we train in equanimity? How do we train our mind to generate and cultivate equanimity in our own mind stream? And so first we can look and see that we ourselves don't want suffering. We want to be free of suffering, and that we want to be happy. We always like a positive situation for ourselves. And so first we should recognize that. And then we can see that even though we want happiness, we say, I, myself, again, this I who we now consider has been this very same person. So for countless and countless lives, this hasn't been achieved by us. This I that we consider this very same I, we still haven't achieved enlightenment. Buddha Shakyamuni, at first was exactly the same as us, was somebody that needed to train and was just a person just like we are. And the Buddha has said that I have come here to this place. I have arrived as a person, but based on the altruistic mind that engages in the benefit of others, I have attained Buddhahood. However, you are all still here and have not yet achieved that. And so, what is the basis that we can actually accomplish this equanimity? So we should see our own self-cherishing. We should see our self-cherishing and also see the situation and see the situation of others. And in doing so, this will help us to really gain enthusiasm to practice. We will be enthusiastic about wanting to understanding this situation of needing to gain this altruistic attitude to gain Buddhahood. We will gain enthusiasm to practice, and this will help us also gain the equanimity towards others, to just regard all others equally. So that's the first way that we can practice and work with equanimity. And then the second way is when we could work with our enemies, those that we, really don't like very much, for example. This is much harder. So we have, those we like, we're very friendly with, those we like, and then we have those we might consider enemies, and then there are those people in between. And actually those are the kind of people that we can start training with at first. And when you see that somebody has even a little problem, you can think, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry that he has to experience that. This difficulty has arisen for him, and oh my goodness, that this is really too bad, and really gain a, genuine understanding and kind of compassion for somebody you don't really care about. It's not, somebody that you really care about, that you have strong feelings one way or the other. So first work with them, and when you see that they have difficulty, really train your mind to generate an understanding, compassion of that. This is a very virtuous activity. And so engaging in this way first with someone who is kind of a neutral person to us, then we can work after that to train more to people in the same way with people that we might consider our enemies.
Oda dusine nin dala mi be dala ni be ji 통용 de selma mazo boji make jine ani rangi semde tata ji choru mebaji chatugu yana ani niji komune niji le lawa ki gres
Nyeshe?
Ninji
laso.
Ninji le lawa ki tu gres ani ninji ke na niji tseme pas niji teni niji chembo teni niji tseme sede ani niji ke na niji ne ani jamba tseme jamba sede gala 대화단 된데들이 니제도 잠바다 니지니 개버다 미시바 셰고레스 미빠찌빠찌냐래 sem전탐절에 미네 룽알라 껴ම්데 룽알란 달데 룽알란 달데 찌마룽냐 벨로지 데라 니제세고레스 아니 디 룽알라 껴봐서 딱이 자우 롱암암 슈슈기 깨나 데레 니지 첨보세고레스
냠냠냠냠 슉슉해나
냠냠 슈슈기 답에
수예나야
베졸 때 먹어 깨기야나 데레 니지 첨보세고레스 띠께서나 다 장주기 쌤 깨알라 다시랑 거래요 말에 펜도요레스 아니
디 닝제 첨보해나 데네
장주기 쌤 깨알라 다 걸고 말레스 장주기 쌤 용어유레스 뭐유유
라소
아니 잠바 세디가라 미바 선전 탐제이 맞지비지 냐레 다 남바데 둥알 대와탄 된데 대지 둥알다 탈데로와 니제도 둥알다 탈데 잠바데 대와탄 된나지 마루 덴바 딱이 자오 아니 네 마이 치긴 세데 잠바 쳔메기 거리 잠바니 잠발락섬 어따티 인데가라 오네 직 두발라섬데니 장주기 쌤기 유로와
디 닝제 당
잠발라섬 니제라섬니까 장주기 쌤기 유리 어따티 인데가라 마니 Teni di kiwa ina te jugo gawatsami kiala tusen gore yo mare ene chanju sem hirun chado gawatsami ranjing kiyon gres tene beso chegwaye yo mare tuya 당염 셈에 두야서 쉬우게 지금 당염데 로 당염데 두이나 사진 구 년백을 떤도 때문에 가리네 끼그리스 사진 바람 물에 떤도 때문에 사진 구 년백알라 사진 두자메 봐 두자전에 라가로게 라가로게 되는 방안 보면 사진 인가 구 년보이나 일을 떤도 때문에 가리네 끼그리 와시 주다나 땅대보 내가 제대보 찾으러 왔어. 서지 에네베 도당 법원단다 민다 영엔질라는 루지 탭샤네 끼그마로 왔어. 왔다 나랑 로 땅용 매바지. 로데 에네베 니링전지 차바이나 에네 가와 끼금 게베 초디 끼 가보여레스. 에네 로데 땅용 두고데 빼 민시는 내 첨부 차대요레스.
So we need to work with our equanimity, with our practice of equanimity, so that our compassion will grow greater and greater, so that this can, until it really arises, this love and this compassion really arises. So compassion is the wish for all sentient beings to always be separated from suffering. Compassion is to wish that all beings were free from any suffering, and that is the definition of compassion. And when we work with equanimity, this helps us work with compassion. And in the beginning, then we work with our equanimity, and we work with the cultivation of compassion. So we have within the four immeasurables, immeasurable compassion. This then brings us to the point of being able to generate immeasurable compassion, equally to all. And then the next stage from this is when we enter the stage of having great compassion. When we enter the stage of having great compassion, this is when our compassion arises effortlessly. It arises naturally and effortlessly. We don't need to apply any effort. It just naturally arises, and this is the great compassion. And this great compassion is, once this arises, there is no reason for us to train in the altruistic mind, the enlightened mind of bodhicitta. Because this is the actual cause. Great compassion is the actual cause for bodhicitta. And so that was within the first immeasurable compassion, and now we have immeasurable love. So love and kindness, for example. So what is the definition of love, loving kindness? The definition of loving kindness is the wish that all beings may be happy, wishing that they always have happiness, whoever it is, wishing, may they, whoever it is, may they have happiness. The first stage is we cultivate it, and then we bring this to the point of equanimity equal to all, of immeasurable loving kindness. The next stage then is the great immeasurable loving kindness, and when we have this great stage of the great loving kindness stage, then this again is the actual cause of bodhicitta. And so again, there is no reason to train at this point in bodhicitta, because naturally we already have the cause. So this equanimity that we have, equanimity is so important. Equanimity is like when we have worked the ground to the point of perfection, where like a field, for example, when we have worked it to such a degree of perfection that things will just naturally grow. Whatever grows there, planted there, will just naturally grow. It will take root, it will flourish. However, without equanimity, if we don't first develop this, equal regard for all, then none of the other immeasurables will take place.
어다 다르도나 셜로가 찌뿌디기 뚝숨 제룽기 율 이나 포일이나 방고래 돈다데 디시고래
Adesso di sumba.
말에 단다데 니파디기 돈다데 dordu나
Oh, la so.
시 팅뇽뇽지나도나
La so.
단디니 꾸네라베 뚝숨 용몬진 해게 유지나 랑게 포일이나 dor고래 나고래 디길 도초라 디키기메나 포일런데나게 휴요 말이스.
So if we take this the second verse, in brief, what is the brief essential meaning of this? Is any place that causes the arising of the three poisons, for one, that's a place that should be abandoned. So if it's a place that causes you to have any of these afflictions, then you shouldn't stay there. And so in very brief, that's the meaning, the brief meaning of the second verse.
어다 단디 셜로가 숨바티기 가르치고 그러잖아. 아니 엠바테나시고 그랬어. 돈당 얼마데 엠바텐다데. 다 융엔 보와 뇽무 림긴디. 다 융엔 바세디가라 두숨 꾸네라베. 아니 란지 머리베 꾸네라베 두숨 제게 율들라 융엔 바체데. 디 빵나 가르 뇽무 림긴디 그 라징기 매차도 그래. 그래. 뇽무 시긴데 다 아주 원진제 그래. 뇽무 시기 간디실링 뇽무 시기 그래. sem 가지 뇽무네 나랑도 셈난기 로현지 로 셈기 셈현지 셈현지 땡다베 셈현데 랑기 귤을 데마타투 셈랍투 마지와 셈 아니 랍투 마데와 소겐지 셈 투퍼쟁인지라 뇽몬시 거래스 땅 알아서 레파 삼다데 셈 끼보 내구데 셈 투나 야가도 따뜻 따지 당그래.
So now we move on to the third verse in the 37, which is concerned with going to an isolated place, practicing and going to a secluded place. So as it said, by avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions naturally decrease. So these emotions, these negative emotions, the three poisons that come through ignorance, then when we go to an isolated, quiet place, these afflictive emotions gradually decrease. And so what we first must do, though, is identify what does it mean, afflictive emotion, negative emotion, mental poison. What is the meaning of this? So within our mind, when we have any of these types of mental arisings, this is a fault. This is something that is a fault to have within our mind stream. And so how can we recognize something like this that would be, how do we identify a negative emotion? Well, it's something that makes us upset, unhappy, disturbed. So when we have this kind of a mental state, then this is due to the afflictive emotions. And so then, so we can be upset, unhappy, and disturbed, or we could be happy, which is better.
뇽몬시인데 셈랍도 마지와 셈 투버쟁인지 지거라. 인도가라 뇽몬시인데 시부지 셈견 나네 땅 원에 미수간네 도차스긴 제단스긴데 제단데 답에 계산 좀 제기 또바키야랑 게지긴 계산 좀 또바 라 또바 루네네 개외초고 또밖에 해줘라.
독박해.
람냠술라네 또밖에.
라소.
또밖에랑 게징이 개선 좀 적은 쏘지다. 예당당 공중이래. 예당.
매버소리.
매버송이. 인두가라 뺏어서 거래.
라소. So these afflictive emotions, they cause us to be unhappy, disturbed, distorted, and they are the fault. They are a fault. They are a fault for us to have within our mind stream. For example, when we have the afflictive emotions of like a passion and aggression, hatred, anger, attachment. So, for example, then we need to look at when we are practicing the path of Dharma, there are accomplishments to be had within the path. When we gain our spiritual accomplishments, it is said that which eliminates, annihilates our accomplishments is the arising of anger. When we get angry, it eliminates, it annihilates our that which we have accomplished on the spiritual path. So there's a great risk here in this particular afflictive emotion.
어다 남양 매배 개종한 게 벨스. 어다 오니 남양 제게 지 아니 랑기 착사니 니도 데네메 인자 아니 가와데 라신기 벨용 그래서 순고하레스.
And then the next line is, without distraction, virtuous activities naturally increase. So without these things that have caused us mental disturbances and so on, these faults we've been discussing, without these disturbances in our way, then our virtues just naturally, our virtuous activities naturally spring forth, they naturally increase.
아니 샘데 로부 르르 빠베고 차이데 아니 랑게 리빠데 땅보 아니 삼로 가레타나 코르투비아 지금 고아래 데인데 리빠타메 쳬랑이 시키스 와다 므마데 냠는 지역에 네 므마데 아니 베 리빠타모 여인자 아니 냠는 므마 지야데 날 레라이 홍고아레스
나소 양키 칙성
리빠타메 쳬랑이 시키 리빠타 샘데 빠베고 르르 여디가라 쳬기 네루 므마 냠는 지야 네루 므마데 셀프 차고아레스 아니 이에네 베 아니 랑게 셈나라 차세보 시달레 진 저기나 아니 딜레 좋아상 트로낭 아니 니시키도 트로낭 기거레스 가보
존난키.
오 냠는 제라 가보
라소. 트로와케.
오 트로와키 거레스.
With clarity, and then the next line reads, with clarity of mind, conviction in the teaching arises. So when we don't have this disturbed state of mind, but rather our mind is settled, relaxed, it becomes very clear. The clearness of our own awareness that has been present becomes apparent. That which we have studied on the practice path of practice, the study of the nature of the mind, the true abiding nature, becomes clearer and clearer. And then also we gain a great enthusiasm towards practice. So with clarity of mind, the conviction in the teaching arises.
엠바세 마갸슬알린스 엠바세 세야데 다 종니 양차니 양차nga 덴디기 타릉복 지라 고고아레 엠바세야던 곰파세는 이 직바레
라소 카츠 링
양차니 그치 시고라
양차.
돔다 체데 락바레 돔 ngabiyala 양차지 시고라
Dom
dusila
Gongchik.
jundom chi la gore
Okay. Laso.
dende ngabjala anita mi ringdung ge domla ringdung yongro
Oh,
di
laso.
se de rakpares chimechi jin tab jip thabo yo mare
Oh.
se de rakpare dom ngabjala ani yangta chi la gores manta yangta ni gore ta dom tongda chi gore
Okay.
yulda compagnie parula
Yulsena.
아,
Pena
율세들라
Kangpa.
율세데 울레치
Uh-huh.
곰파스데 모나스리라
La soteha
팅
koso.
퍼라 버룰라 텐디지 모네잖아 텐디지 고고아레
Uh-huh.
치수당해요 말아
Mhm, mhm. Um, so the last line is relying on the solitary place is the practice of bodhisattvas. So when we practice, then we should practice in a solitary place such as this, and within the scriptures this is actually detailed quite specifically, and Geshe-la was explaining this system of measurement to me. I'm not familiar with it. So there's a measurement that's this long, and then if you take 500 ngapkya, if you take 500 of these, so your place should be 500 of at least 500 arm stretches away from anything. That's at the very basic minimum, and then at the most is like 2,000 of those, or then further you could say 2,000. And Geshe-la said that actually the 500 of the arm stretches is a rough measurement, but in any case, what this is saying is that we, away from the busyness, we should be roughly about 500 arm stretches away in a quiet place, in an isolated place.
다 엠비체들라 바게 너데게나 숭요레 에 칼라 라레라보 칼룽주보토보 아니 젠생기 네메바 칼라
레라보
레라보 에 룽단테조 주보토보 칼룽주보토보 아니 젠생기 지바메바 कुमादा चापेन जीपा मेपा वदा पे अनि छुंडा दा उंडा मेपा छुगुंडा छुंडा येना या
छुंडा
ओ
छुंडा
छुडा
yerpa
छुंडा मेपा छुंडा छुबो मेन योना yang om gele kyunchi gorwa
okay
samrogune tangela kyunchi gorwa
laso
watene meba sa kusimbo jigowa
And so in the ornament of the sutras, it goes into more detail about how do we choose this isolated place to practice? What is the ideal isolated place to practice? Well, it should be some place where it is convenient and easy for us to get food, like to sustain ourselves. It should also be an environment that is kind of works for our constitution, one in accord with our physical constitution, such as clean air and maybe appropriate temperature and so on. So something that works for us in this way. It also should be a place that doesn't have fierce animals, fierce and dangerous animals, so no worries for that. Also free of any bandits and thieves. And also the place should be quiet. There shouldn't be a lot of sound, like it shouldn't be, for example, next to a rushing river. And so I checked with Geshe and I said, no sound of water or sound of water? And he said, no sound, not the big sound of the rushing river, because if there was a big sound of the rushing river, then, sitting quietly in meditation, it wouldn't be as easy. So anyways, it should be a quiet place as well.
lamrim namdru labjana la ugome kaptu tela jine tu tash sung yores jine tu vela jine ge chotu se sung yores
So
tungen ma son chotu wata ti kaptu lo tan kran to di sarbu chagres
oh, okay. Ani
ni
di pecha
homework in
lasso
namdru la chang
chakpe kitap.
lamrim namdru la chang
Okay, stage. Lasso.
Pabonka
Rinpoche.
Di kran to dring yang homework res
And so within the stages, the Namdral stages of the path by Master Pabonka, then actually within the section where it talks about the 6
5 paramita.
the
Ngapati.
tsokdruk.
Sotuyor.
Tsokdruk.
Sotu.
Olaso shine
Oh, tenan.
ngapa kontak ani ngapa
Parjin
olaso
duyor아. parjin du는 parjin ngapa.
laso.
Jine parjin.
Okay.
Something ki parjin du 두산 두루들라 지네기 초두들 숨어레스
Samten ki pachin ki nangla.
지네기 띠 지네 두산 두루들라 지네기 초두들 숨어레스 초두 갑도 로다 디 MB 율렘바데 따다티나 라그레스.
So you have homework, it seems, within this very text, the stages of the path of the Namdral stages of the path, within the paramita of meditative concentration within that section, then it talks about like 6 concordant factors to work with for Shanae. And so if you look within that, you can learn about how to find the very perfect place for meditation. What does it mean by this solitary, isolated place? And Geshe-la says, so you all have homework.
That samla homework tena yagore스 와. 그런서 강가사바 말에 망체 닝바래. 또서 회자 망주로 삼로 망주 땅 같이 삼로 땅지래 셈네데키세 꼰조 나게 말해스. 땅에 띵가랑 나냠렘 뭐 전부적인 제게 말해. 나 삼로 땅에 거진데라 니 셈데 투보 말해. 삼로 땅에 거진데라 니 셈데 따좀지 투고 말해. 자 로투주잖아 딱 떠름 나본데야 되기 같은지. 간 니트라테 좀 카르포요 말레스 로겐 투주 레브레스
라서
샤자 셈 마투지 셈 뉴모원도 마르지 셈 기부 용어야 돼. 네 삼로 야부지 다레스 남베 중기 토네 삼로 야부 다네 티 같은데 나 타카르 차기 고르고레스
디라 드월와 요레페 티
삼로는 데와요 봐. 삼로는 데와요 레스
라서
삼로 가지고 셈이 디기요 디미데 lui 게가 중요하래.
라서
펜도용 그랬어 그래서.
So I think it's okay, Geshe-la is saying, if I give you homework sometimes. Most of you are senior students, you're not new, you have been practicing and studying a while. So however much you can think of this, and you can take that much from it, and actually it's, it has some benefit. I mean, look, Geshe-la is saying, look at me, I don't have gray hair, my hair is still my hair is still brown, and look, I have no gray hair. And so what is that from? So in Geshe-la saying, if you study, if you look into this, if you work with this, then you can gain the same. And so I asked Geshe-la, I said, there's a connection to gray hair? I wasn't sure. I thought I should add. So he said, absolutely. He said, if you look at this and you study, the more you do that, you will have the well-being, the happiness of mind, the settled happiness of mind. Through the settled happiness of mind, there are indeed these youthful things that will come of that, such as, the not gaining the gray hair in the case of this example. So Geshe-la is saying, really good for you to do.
오늘 삼로 아버지 마땅이나 남도 엠비 왕기 샘티 마부지래 그래스 샘저 되기 류숭냠 그래스 류숭냠 베이나 류긴 중화 구두그 중화 가져고네 에네 녀마 망로 다갈 망로 에네 베민 남도 자사 망로
가레 망로 건다
녀마
세나디
동라
녀마 okay. It's a new word for me. It's never come up. Okay. So you get it, wrinkles.
Wrinkle, yeah. Any tagarmang kegiris.
Takar.
Oh. Any teacher Marimbagala, any Juaguchi, Machando, and Yagas. Same kibuch in the papa which in the watch Pemboris.
So actually, thinking well and considering well on the teaching, studying well is actually really important. Because when we fall under the sway of afflictive emotions, when we fall prey to these afflictive emotions, what comes next of that? Well, all kinds of emotions and thinking then come up. And actually due to this, so due to all of this, conceptual activity, due to afflictive emotions, this can actually affect our health, the status of our health, like the strength of our body's elements. Due to this kind of thing, emotional upsets and so on, then our body degenerates, the elements of our body degenerates, and there's actually said to be a connection to then there being, more wrinkles, gray hair, for example. But when you're happy of mind, this is not the case. It leads also, happiness of mind also leads to good health in the body, like a vibrant health of the body as well.
어떻든지 네가 오늘 가서 툭툭 장주기서나 매버춘제 니짐지 깡다 아니 롤다와 안로 로주다 안로나 아니 직딩이지 당인다 이든 셈나 트로낭 밀라미시 치마 콘동이 에 디자데 아니 베미 간듯이 투이나 아니 셈데 마투올라 시부지 펜보용 것도 없이.
오케이,
니시미 남자야.
니시미님.
믹바상 남바. 심전타 언제 섬나다 대동알라 껴들길로지. 아니 배 섬나다네. 내가 란로링이 샤고래 karma 주정아 가서 되기나. 샤다. 아니 로 꼼기 아니 밀라 미주 코레용 기지 그레스.
미추.
아니 샘달라 트로낭 레그리스.
트로낭.
맞아 샘들이는데 미주용도 갈라 샘데 트로낭이요 말에. 샘데 두뽀요. 두뽀.
라서.
아니 배 샘데 배 때가 나tum 차데 미셀에 차로 샘기 남바데 미셀 차로 그래. 니시 삼도다네 아니 미샤지 코레나 미주지 코레나 샘데 다모 야보 간디시 삼다이나 삼로 코르투야 지운 거래. 띠 개버려요.
So you should train in this altruistic mind that focuses on others as best as you possibly can. And you should, for example, think about others' suffering and so on with such great strength of emotion and compassion that it brings tears to your eyes, that you really care so much about others that tears actually come to your eyes, and you should practice like that, in that way, as much as you can. For example, if you could sit in that very way with such an intensity of caring and concern for others that tears would come to your eyes, for example, for 10 or 15 minutes. And train further and further on that year by year. For example, that is a really open and beneficial mental state, mindset. In the other side of that, when we don't have the altruistic mind that really takes others as primary concern, we have a very tight mind. It's much more tight. And so there's a big difference between these two mind states, and so we should work with this first one, with this intensity of concern, focused towards others to the best of our ability.
어다 융은포 뉴모링긴디 남예메바 거절관기 펠 리반다와 철랑의시기 엠바셈바 갈슬 알레인 세데타 간제 율 엠베케주디 셰응도 와스.
And so by avoiding bad this is the that the third verse in whole. By avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions naturally decrease. Without distraction, virtuous activities naturally increase. With clarity of mind, conviction in the teaching arises. Cultivate seclusion. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So this verse here illustrates why it is extremely important for us to rely on solitary places, just as the sons of the Buddhas do.
직 말아서 오늘 심 미투에 제라 엠바땡고래 말아서 가르잖아 단지 마리바 아주 귤에 예예래 겐지 트레서나 깨쳐줘 저기 녀모 깨쳐줘 진데디요 녀모 깨발라 예겐고 말에 엠베서고 말에 암암 슈슈기 기거래 뒤율 꼼배온 게 해래 तेनाजिन गेवा छोला कोमचुना तेनाजिन के है योरे कांचे न्यूमों देला निम्बू तोबदें योरे मोने जेना गेवा देला न्यूमों तोबदें यो मारे गेवा काचे फेलिना ते मेज जेंदा जिग मेज जतुयाई लो यांग दाबाजी यो मारे
아니 निम्बू
लो तोबदें निम्बू तोबदें शुतल दें निम्बू दें 냠보
올라서
가르잖아 뇽몽 코 루부르와 차디오래 뇽몽데 루부르이 킹가니 게용교 차디오래 연된데 셈기 한신데 잠바다 제와스긴데 셈기 한신 셈기 연된데 디팅상 체리베시거래 낭비셰네 로니동 두게 침바레지 들어와 잠바다 제와티조 셈기 연된 임바 남배셰네 남배수네 로니동 아비야 침바레스 좀 된데 소래 디니 단다버도 로니동 아비야 인상 체리베제니 제지자인다가 잠바다 제와데 배 셈기란신데 셈기연데리 샤스 어떻든지 셰기어레스
라소 첸릭베 기드라와 카리 셰기어레
셈기연덴
라소
하고선
디하고선 이나양 디 센릭베 디콜라 디 낭페 추기 센릭베
만마레 윗컨슨 디브리지슨 셰거
라소 탱상 라소
이마저 겹겨요 센리바 추미 killing ke mileng인지 남베준래 겹겨지거래
오케이 라소
그 칠keling하지 말해
강송 양 콘소니 송기요래
그것도 셰거
라소
땡이 죽은 누군데 셰고
So if we are distracted, if we are pulled off by distractions that really come due to our self-clinging based on our ignorance, actually this is a condition that we're quite familiar with. It's actually almost like these afflictive mental states and negative emotions are just like ready to pop up. It's not like we have to actually work to get angry. We don't have to strive in this or put any effort to get afflictive mental states. It's like they are just ready to arise. And usually this is based on some kind of an object, some type of an outer object. Then suddenly we're thrown into kind of a emotional mental state. And then, then we need to rely on some kind of an antidote, an actual antidote to apply to this situation that is just the situation that we all have. However, these afflictive emotions and mental states, they're fleeting. These are temporary. They are adventitious arisings that are fleeting. However, the qualities of mind are our actual nature. They are not fleeting and temporary, but rather they are our actual nature according to Buddhism. For example, they are the nature of love and compassion naturally. And even these days, the modern scientists are also now, so this is something even that Buddha propounded 2,500 years ago, a very long time ago, and then look how many years have already gone past, more than 2,500 years. And modern experts, the modern science is now catching up with this and is also saying that these are naturally occurring positive qualities of the very human nature, of our very mind. And so this is come about in some study that Geshe-la was cited that's happening in Wisconsin with these scientists, and I think maybe then he has a story about this.
David Richardson.
David Richardson.
Neuroscience.
Richard Davidson.
Richard Davidson. Kanche ko neuroscience race.
Oh, lasso.
Neuroscience in the gala kogi pugu chunchung kata mitugwen. Omatungen yara pugu chunchung kata mitugwen tendela. Any
Kata mitugwen.
Kata mituka.
Kacheshe
Michigan pugu chunchung.
Lasso.
Omatungen da pugu chunchung lochi ni tendela.
Oh, lasso.
Any remote teacher.
Oh, lasso.
Any chitichila semna chea. Any polochi ma yon. Any pugu chitichila semna chena. Pugu chitichi gago marta.
The
remote race.
Lasso. The Bugo Denso, Yamina the David.
Remote de pictures on the tembare.
Lasso.
Then you got Puchi the Chilla, no king in the zo, put to Gago Marta. Remain on no king in Jorva.
Oh, Lasso.
So called Gago Mare, Puto.
Gagio Mare.
Oh, Puchi the Chilla, Pentochi the Roaching engine, Puto Lapa Tapit, anyway, Gomogoje did Chicadus.
Lasso.
Dila, Pensem, say that there was in the Semgi Ranjin Jirisha, see the Dibirisangi, Delchik Gamni, remote Garum Jeten Nashas, the Garum Sunju Kabayani and the Sungudus. Then in the Gala, Tinsa, Neru Science, but Senri Patene Mambugi, Ditola Gavkurchigores. Tindula, Senri Patus of home Jackie, Yohade, what I can't tell in young warriors. And it's Senri Pa Mambuji, Mula Lepin Guljoji mother. Same thing, there's some corner Kurgo Mare. That in some Lepal Zurdu, same Giochindu, Yosare said Laguare.
Karila Yusuri?
Lepal Zurdu, same
Zuldu.
Oh, Shepa, Yosare said Zurdu Chindus Shegore. The Indigalata, Nambishula Capture Tajetana, Capture Ragore, and around to Nambatizu. That Tajetana is some that she would nature embrace, one is. And
so the neuroscientist Richard Davidson, this study in his work in Wisconsin, he actually did some type of an experiment of sorts. He took some very young children. These children were before the age where they could talk, so they weren't yet talking. So there was, no, verbal ability yet. So very young children, and he showed them pictures. When they were shown pictures of like some kind of harm that had some kind of harm or somebody hurting someone, they did not like it. They displayed that they did not like that. That was something that they didn't like. And on the other side, when they showed people helping somebody else or some type of a positive situation, then they actually clapped. They were delighted. And so they had these different reactions that were just there at a very, very young age. And so this is an indication that love and compassion are already there. And many scientists actually used to say that, most scientists used to say that the mind resided in the brain. That's where the consciousness was in the physical brain. But through modern study, there are now accepting and supporting of the fact that this mind, this consciousness, could actually be outside of the brain. And so they're supportive of the Buddhist thought on this as well. And so this is what's coming of modern scientific research, and that's why actually a thinking and examination of subjects is really a crucial activity.
오다 아메리카 존데네 엠바텐 고야미도 미가조베 가반로이나 거구 심부 시부도와 다 거구 심부 나기고 거구 심베나라 아니 데네 소소 셈 바기 게웨 촐라 장네 아니 누스제베이나 시부 펜다 연구레스 이거네 다 메시지 맞에 취샤지 년데네 팽기 바레스 다강 퇴바데 삼노당 바데 아니 라랭 케버지 고고아레스 라랭 케버지 중앙이나 데라 홈세데 굴 제티리 자와치 제고아레스 고아레 홈세인데 굴티 마레 제티리 자와 제고아레스 라랭 케고 그러세 고아레 이시부스 개침바레스 아니 참자 데니 미다발레 연구도
Mitakpa.
미다바데
Oh, that's so.
디제마데
Okay. So America is a very busy place. There aren't too many quiet, simple, solitary places. People everywhere, a lot of busyness. But when we can find a place to go that's alone, so and sit in quiet and watch the mind and work with our practice, this is incredibly helpful, incredibly beneficial. And if you can do this, then this is what brings us to a progress in our practice, to bring us to be, expert practitioners. This is what we need to take up. Meditation it's an activity. It's actually something that we need to engage in. It's actually something we need to adopt or take up. And so next, so we'll take a break, and then after that we come to impermanence.